Alright, welcome back everybody to YouTube channel BTCTV, and we continue to do videos about famous people in blockchain industry.
Today with me is Charles.
He is very famous because he is a founder of Cardano, correct? He was one of co-founder of Ethereum at that time, and as far as I understand that you also co-founder of Ethereum Classic.
Yeah, and BitShares.
Wow. It's amazing, right? Thanks for coming and staying with us here.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so this is like what we see right now, right? So that you have so big success. But when it started, when you first time saw blockchain, why you was jumping into this industry? Why you were so inspired by blockchain?
So I joined the cryptocurrency space during a time period when there were two predominant demographics in the ecosystem. One were the cypherpunk movement, and they came from the 1980s. These guys were like David Chaum and Hal Finney and Wei Dai, and basically these guys said, hey, if information can move at the speed of light, why can't money move at the speed of light? And so they said, why don't we build a bunch of protocols to make that happen? So we saw innovations like Bcash and DigiCash and so forth. And these innovations were all about basically taking money that lives in paper or in your bank account and turning it to some form of a token. The fundamental problems with the tokens were that they were centralized. They had a centralized ledger. So that crowd had been working on those problems for about 30 years. And the second group, and that was the group I belonged to, was more of a politically motivated group. These are people who come from the Austrian economics world, people who come from the private monies world, and basically their goal was to say, hey, can we have monetary competition? Can we unchain money from the bank? Can we unchain the notion of movement of value from traditional financial channels and build something completely new and somewhat compatible, but they come from different cultures and societies. And I was part of the Ron Paul movement. I worked on the campaign back in 2007, and he was a big gold is money type of guy and Austrian economics type of guy. So that's what brought me into the space around 2011. Initially, as a speculator, I just bought some Bitcoin. I mined some Bitcoin.
You did mine, right?
I did mine. Yeah. Back in the day, I had a GPU miner and a CPU miner, and on the GPU side, I ended up building a crossfire array of AMD 5850s. I think they were 5880s. I can't remember the number, and it was in a quad crossfire. And I got a few Bitcoin out of that. It was nice, but there really wasn't much to do. There wasn't much you could innovate with. I mean, you could write some code, but we didn't have smart contracts, and the monetary differentiation was, what fork of Bitcoin do you like? Are you going to have 4 times the amount of coins or 8 times the amount of coins? So you really didn't have much differentiation on the features and cryptographic side. Then I entered the space professionally in 2013, and that was really when the second wave of people came, and that wave of people were the investor class, the entrepreneur class, and this is where like serious money came into the space. We started seeing Silicon Valley guys start Circle and Zappo and these types of things, and basically Bitcoin hit over $1 billion in market cap, and people got very serious about the ecosystem. And shortly thereafter, I started a company called Invictus Innovations, with Dan Larimer, and we created BitShares, and that was kind of our first attempt to build a real cryptocurrency. And parts of it worked, parts of it didn't work so well. That whole BitUSD thing wasn't perfect, but it was at least a pretty innovative product for its time. And then I moved on to Ethereum with Vitalik Buterin and the rest of the gang, and that's the one I'm usually known for. And we kind of brought smart contracts into the space, and Ethereum,
you was like one of 8 co-founders.
Yeah. And what Ethereum basically did is it created the smart contract revolution, effectively. And what that revolution did was give us the ICO, it gave us the DApp, and that created the 2017 bubble, which brought millions of people into the ecosystem, and Bitcoin damn near hit $1 trillion, which was pretty crazy. So it's been a long ride. It started philosophical from 2 different camps, and then it went into the entrepreneurial side, and then it went into the investment banking side, and the movement just keeps growing.
Tell me, I heard about that when you joined Vitalik Buterin, right, Ethereum, then came some problems, right, when they say no to you, and you left them. And you spent approximately 6 months to think about what to do next.
Yeah, I was in the hit.
How it was like those 6 months, because it was like, for me it's like reminding me like Steve Jobs when he left Apple, right, when they kick off him. So how you came out with the idea was to start something new.
Right. So the big dispute was whether Ethereum should be a for-profit venture or it should be a not-for-profit venture. And what I believed was that the most prudent, wisest thing to do was for the Ethereum group to form a for-profit entity, and we actually did. It was Ethereum Switzerland GmbH, and that was the original plan. And then get some venture capital money, and there was already actually very strong interest in the Valley to give us VC money because we were kind of the anti-Blockstream, and Blockstream was around to raise about 28 million, and we could probably have gotten the same. And basically, once we had raised the money, the concept was to use that to build Ethereum to a 1.0 status, and then give that to a foundation, have the foundation do a crowd sale with a distinct and separate board. We felt that the risk was lower if we did a crowd sale with a finished product, and we felt that a separation of concerns would have been better. Plus, we put golden handcuffs on all the founders, and they had to stick around to get their payout. I felt that if we did a not-for-profit, everybody would just eventually leave. And it's true, 7 of the 8 founders all left. And you know, the only one left is Vitalik. You know, Jeff is making games. Gavin has his own company, Parity Tech. Joe has Consensus. Mihai has Akasha. Amir Chatrit is just independently doing projects. Anthony's doing Decentral, and you know, I'm doing IOHK. And, you know, only Vitalik is left. So I felt that if, you know, we raised money with a not-for-profit, there wasn't an incentive to stick around, there wasn't an incentive to spend the money wisely, and it wasn't a very agile structure. The Swiss Foundation model, it's really meant to give grants, but it's not meant to be hyper-competitive and agile and so forth. So anyway, after I left, I kind of had to figure out, well, what do I want to do? And I was kind of pissed off because I didn't have such a great experience with BitShares, and you know, I was pretty pissed off about the whole Ethereum experience, and so I was just kind of floating around, and I said, you know, I'm just going to go back into mathematics. I'm not going to even bother with this crypto thing. I've had such a bad time with it. But eventually, I said, you know, well, what happened was I got invited to do a TED Talk in Bermuda, and I viewed that kind of as my exit of the ecosystem. So I went and I just said, this is what I'm going to say, this is the end. But then the TED Talk came out and it was wildly successful, and a lot of people sent me emails and messages and they said, hey, you should do something. And I said, all right, well, I got one more in me, so if I'm going to go back, I'm going to do the company I want to do. So I decided, look, I'm going to start 2 companies in one. One company is a science company, and we're going to study the science of blockchain. So we're going to understand everything about privacy and everything about consensus and these types of things, and do it in the university setting and do peer-reviewed research. But then I'm also going to do an engineering company, and we'll be kind of agnostic, and we'll build cryptocurrencies and blockchain solutions for people. Because my bet was that there would be an oversupply of capital and undersupply of talent in this space, which turned out to be true, especially in 2017 when all these billions of dollars entered in, but there wasn't enough engineers or scientists to get things done. So I started IOHK with Jeremy Wood in 2015, and it grew from 2 people to now 160 people, and we operate in 16 countries, and we're 100% revenue driven. There's no venture capital.
Wow, amazing. Maybe, in your opinion, maybe you wanted to show to Vitalik that he was wrong, what you did.
Well, you know, you can let ego come into it, but at the end of the day, the space is big enough for a diversity of entrepreneurs, and if it's about how do we take over, you know, or how do we compete, I mean, you're thinking about the wrong things. At the end of the day, everything we do is open source and patent free, and we're building a corpus of science and engineering solutions that will survive our company. Even if IOHK was to go out of business in 5 years or 10 years, and likely as that might be, we'd still leave behind hundreds of papers and, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lines of code and tons of great ideas, which every entrepreneur in this space gets to use. The cryptocurrencies aren't about people. They're about processes. They're about pushing power to the edges. And I feel that the way we do these things at IOHK are uniquely well suited for survivability. The problem with Ethereum, and frankly most cryptocurrencies, is that they tend to have cults of personality around small groups of people. And if those groups of people go away, the cryptocurrency loses a huge amount of momentum, and also it loses its identity. You know, the greatest thing Satoshi ever did was fire himself. You know, he left in 2008, and it freed up the movement for other people to come in and have ideas. Had he stayed around, it's like we'd all look at this God figure. Oh, Satoshi, what do we do next? Where do we go next? So I think the key is just to say, hey, take a step back and divorce yourself from the process and just decide what you want to leave behind. And that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, you are a successful businessman, right? Scientist, maybe you can say. But what is your usual daily life is looking like, your daily routine?
Depends on whether I'm traveling or not. So I travel about 200 days, 250 days a year. So I've been 28 countries just this year. Been 50 countries in the last 3.5 years.
Why you do this?
Well, we operate in 16 countries, so you got to flow between the offices. But also, there's a lot of events I get invited to, and I've had to pick up a lot of the marketing slack for Cardano, and as a consequence, I just naturally end up going to many different places. But also, it's just a lot of fun to meet people, and it's a lot of fun to actually see different cultures and experience different things, and it's been a great experience. So if I'm on the road, I run my company from Slack, and I have to kind of set up a mobile office, and so my secretary and I travel together, and his name's Josh Miller, and God, we have a hard time, but we get it done, and they're long days. They're about 12 to 16-hour days, and you're always sick all the time, eating the wrong foods, and gaining weight. I gained 40 pounds of weight. I was like almost 20 kilos, give or take, during the last 3 years. So it does take a big toll on your health. If I'm actually in one place for a long period of time, then I set up a permanent office, and I get back into a routine, start losing weight, get up at 5 a.m., you meditate, and, try to exercise every day, and, do those types of things. So.
What type of sport exercises you like? Sport gym or running or swimming?
I used to jog all the time, and that was a lot of fun. But I love rowing as well. And there's just a cardio. There's all kinds of forms of doing that. And then core training and strength training is fun. But it's not so much what types of exercise. It's just the notion of committing to the exercise every day. That routine and pattern. It's tremendously good for you. It makes you live longer, and it keeps you mentally sharp. And that's really the key.
It's type of meditation as well, especially a long training, like for 1 hour, it's like your brain is cleaner after.
Exactly, and you're just so much more productive. And that's the unintended downside, I'd say, of travel, is that while you get to meet cool new people and see cool new places, it is so hard to maintain a good diet and a good exercise and good mental clarity and sleep hygiene.
Do you have still some times to read books, maybe to watch movies? What is your favorite book during maybe the last couple years?
Yeah, actually I listen to a lot of audiobooks now because the constant travel, you have a lot of downtime, so you read a lot. So I tend to read scientific books, and I tend to read books on things like complex adaptive systems. In fact, there's one titled just like that. It's from Scott Page, which is just a great book on how to understand the world around us. Basically, the world has all these complex systems, and the systems are composed of simple rules that have been run to evolve over time into that complexity. And if you understand how those rules work and how the evolution works, then you can actually understand markets and you can understand human interactions in a much better way than if you just try to analyze the complex thing at the top level. So Scott Page did some great work there. But I also read a lot of biographies. In fact, what I'm reading right now is Ulysses from Ron Chernow. And, Grant, from Ron Chernow. It's on the Ulysses S. Grant. He was American president right after Andrew Johnson, and he was a Civil War general. And he was the ultimate underdog in American society. He was born in 1822, and throughout the first half of his life, he just kept failing in everything. He went to West Point, and then and he was a great horseman, so you figured he'd be a cavalry officer, but he ends up becoming a quartermaster and being stationed to all these terrible outposts in the middle of nowhere, and he drinks himself into getting discharged from the army. Then he was in utter destitute and poverty, and he was kind of split between two worlds, where his wife belonged to the planter class and her dad had slaves, and his father was an abolitionist. So the closer he got to his wife, the more his father would hate him. The closer he got to his dad, the more his wife would hate him. So yeah, you couldn't win that fight. And so he tried to be a farmer, and was terribly unsuccessful at that. And then he worked at his dad's tannery, and his dad was kind of a dick, so he only gave him like $800 a year to survive, and so it was real tough for him. And he kept getting swindled too. Like he was in California during the gold rush and he got sucked into all these get-rich-quick schemes, and his friends would borrow money and never pay him back. And it's just amazing though that despite all of that, when he entered the Civil War, he went from a captain all the way to the general of the army commanding 1 million people, and then he became president of the United States. And then here's the thing, he still got swindled. Towards the end of his life, he got taken in by this kind of Bernie Madoff of the 19th century, and he lost all of his money to a Ponzi scheme. So then he had to write his biography to survive, and he was dying of cancer at the same time. So because he smoked like 30, 40 cigars a day, he died of tongue and throat cancer. So while he was dying of it, and he could barely eat, barely talk, he wrote hundreds of thousands of words, and 3 days or 4 days after he died, after he finished the biography, he died. Yeah, so just an amazing biography. Ron Chernow is, Ron Chernow is a great biographer. Highly recommend him.
Thanks. That's excellent story. How about maybe we will make a small challenge with our subscribers that they will, when the video will be live, they will start asking interesting questions, and we will select, or you will select the top one question, and the winner will get that book. And maybe with your signature, if this possible.
Yeah, grant from Chernow. Yeah, okay. Actually, if they ask some questions, I do AMAs pretty regularly.
I know. I mentioned that you do on YouTube your EMA, and pretty successful, a lot of views. So I saw that. So that will be great to get your book with your signature if you can.
Sure.
And so don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel BTCTV and start asking interesting questions. Thanks a lot, Charles, for staying and to be with us. So have a nice day to you.
Thank you.